Hi, everyone. Fran here. What happens when a concussion is not dealt with properly, not given the time to heal, and not taken time off work so that your body and your mind and your spirit can all work together for healing? My guest on opening this week is a young lawyer named Kat Reilly. Kat suffered two concussions back to back, and it was the wake up call from the universe, as she said, that helped her learn to truly live her life. I hope you stay with us, and welcome to the opening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the opening. This is a place where hope is happening. And it's a joy and a privilege for me to interview Kat Reilly. Thank you, Kat, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Fran. It's amazing to be here with you today.
Oh, and the fun thing about this is that we're in the same country, Kat. I'm
Yay.
here in the cold and snow, lots of it. And you're on Vancouver Island, British Columbia.
Yes, the very green, wet West Coast.
Our climate is so different. So I am a little bit envious right now.
It's true. You don't have to shovel rain, but sunny skies are nice too, let's just say.
Yeah, yeah. So you're the author of this beautiful book. I mean, look at the cover, right? It just puts you in the mood.
Mhm.
Legally Zen. You're a lawyer and you're great at your job. You've been doing law for 20 years, but you weren't always a lawyer. So the question I love to ask my guests, what would your best high school friend have, how would they have described you?
Gosh, it's a great question. My high school friends probably would have said, they would have told you that I was very studious and serious, and I was. I was very serious about my studies, and I think I've always had that achiever mentality. Certainly, that's how I was raised. I was sporty. I liked to have fun, and um, outgoing within my friend group, but I was pretty shy and pretty reserved with everyone else. So I think people would have said that, she was a smart, studious, teenager, but kind of shy. It was probably hard to get much of a sense of who I was from if you weren't sort of in my inner circle.
But after high school, you did some traveling, though.
I did. I did. Yeah, I took a year off in between. So I did my undergraduate degree first at the University of British Columbia, and then I took a year off in between my undergrad degree and my law degree, and I traveled around Western Europe, and I lived in Edinburgh, Scotland for a few months, and it was such a great period of exploration and growth, and exactly what a 20-year-old kid needs. Strap on the backpack and learn a bit about yourself. A adventure of a lifetime for sure.
So that set you up. It set you up for coming back to Vancouver and the big city of Vancouver. For me, it's huge, right? And you got into law, you got your degree, you passed your bar exam, you did everything you were supposed to do. You bought your own condo in
Mhm.
Vancouver, which
Mhm.
anyone who knows about real estate in Vancouver will know that you've worked hard and you must have been good at your job to be able to purchase that condo before the age of 30, right?
Yes, it's true. This was the exact sort of mentality that I had. It was like, I'm gonna get good grades. I'm gonna go to a good law school. I'm gonna go, back home to Vancouver, and I'm gonna get a good job at a good firm, and I'm gonna pay down my student loans, and I'm gonna save up for a down payment. And I was sort of tick, 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 and I was doing those things. And I was, pleased as punch with myself about all of that, really. And yeah, sure enough, I had saved up enough for a down payment to buy a condo when I was 29 was when I bought it. And I feel very fortunate that I got into that real estate market when I did, because like you say, the Vancouver real estate market is sort of known, at least in Canada, for being a bit treacherous and high priced. So I was very, very pleased when I scored that condo.
But legally Zen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, is this a paradox or an oxymoron, right? I mean, like I'm a teacher and I think it's both because something happened. So what happened, Kat, that changed it didn't really change the trajectory, but maybe it made you more aware of who you truly were.
Yeah, both actually, I think. So I suffered a concussion, a pretty serious concussion, in 2010, and followed by another concussion 18 months later in 2012. And I think they did both change the trajectory of my life and, sort of changed what I knew about myself and what I came to learn about myself. And for anybody who's experienced concussion, you'll know how much it shakes you to your core. And you don't know what kind of brain you have until you have a brain injury. It turned out that my brain was, in the slow to recover category, is what I learned from my neuropsychologist. And as somebody who, did not like to be slow at anything, having a brain injury where I was being told that my brain was on the slower end of the recovery spectrum was pretty hard to hear and, sort of rocked me to my core in a lot of ways, especially because, my work and, being a lawyer was so much a part of who I was, who I am. It's what I've done for, like you say, the last 20 years. And it really caused me to reconsider and reevaluate a lot of the things in my life, I would say.
But Kat, you weren't doing any high risk sport.
No,
No. What happened with the first brain injury?
the first one was I was away on a friend trip with a bunch of girlfriends, and we did this annual bike riding wine tasting trip. And I have this image very clearly of us riding around, getting into the parking lot of the first winery on the first time that we did this trip, and somebody just yelling out, "It tastes like grape, you guys!" And so we nicknamed the weekend "Tastes Like Grape." And we were in the sort of wine region of British Columbia, the Okanagan Valley, and on a very gentle rail bed, like a decommissioned rail bed called the Kettle Valley Railway Trail. It's like a 2% grade. Like it's not steep. Like if that's zero, like that's two, like it's not a steep trail. And we were biking back to our campsite, and we've been doing wine tastings that afternoon, but no, nobody was inebriated. But we're riding our bikes, and there was a slightly steeper part of the trail. And my bike that I had borrowed from a different friend who wasn't on the trip, I started to pick up a bit of speed, went to apply the brakes, and realized that the back brake was not working. And it all happened so fast. I don't know actually how much realization I had in the moment, but the long and short of it is the back brake didn't work. And when you're applying the brakes and picking up speed and only your front brake engages, what happens is you go, as I put it in the book, I think ass over tea kettle. And I landed on my head and hit the ground pretty hard. And was sort of sprawled out on this gravel path. Woke up to a friend of mine who was a nursing student at the time, digging gravel out of my mouth to clear my airway to make sure that I could breathe. And that first concussion was a struggle. It certainly made life difficult for a while, and it gave me it was hard to function as at the same level as I was, but I pushed through. I was trying my best to ignore it. And then at a point, it became sort of hard to ignore, and the symptoms had carried on for a year or more. And that's when I consulted a neurologist who would have been a neurologist. He gave me the reassuring, but also very disappointing advice that it's just going to take some more time. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, is this just how I am now? And like I say, for anyone who's suffered concussion, you realize how amorphous the symptoms can be, how difficult they can be to navigate, how much emotional load there is with it. And to be told that, just hang tight, you got a little ways to go. We've still got a bit more time before you're going to be fully recovered, was a real blow, actually.
You kept on working. You kept on your 60-hour work weeks. You pushed through. So, I mean, you just kept on life as normal, and yet it was anything but normal. The experiences and the effects that you were feeling were not normal, but you just did the work like you were supposed to do the work, because once you start a file, you finish the file. That's the life of a lawyer. And I think for many occupations we're the same way. So, Kat, at that time, did you know that you were supposed to take it easy from the time of the event to a year later when you saw the neurologist? Did you know?
No, no, I didn't. It was long enough ago that the way that concussions were spoken about at that time was still, it was either sort of like you had your bell rung and you needed to
Right.
pick yourself back up and get out there on the field, or courtroom floor, as it were, or did you have a brain injury? The sort of gray area of complex concussion, slow to recover. My GP spoke about none of that to me. I was not advised to sit in a dark room. I actually remember having an appointment with my GP where she like literally gave me a pat on the knee and said, don't worry, like you're just feeling this more because you're used to functioning at such a high level. And it was just sort of this like hang in there kid kind of response. And so uh, I just I did just keep going. I kept, operating as normal. I didn't feel like I had the license to, or any reason in particular to slow down or to stop working or to take care of myself in any particular way. And I think that, that's a function of society sort of learning more about brain injury and it becoming more almost socially acceptable to talk about back then. And it wasn't that long ago. We're only talking 15 years, but the conversation was different. And for anybody who else, who's listening, who is Canadian, this was before like Sidney Crosby was talking about his concussions. And I feel like that was a real shift in the discussion. And that hadn't happened yet. So it really, to me, felt like either I had my bell rung and I needed to get back out there on the field, or I had a serious problem in my hands. And I was not prepared to be a lawyer with a brain injury. So I just kept on slogging and, didn't really see any other option for myself. I didn't give myself any other option either. And I wasn't presented with any.
You had brain fog, you had difficulty with bright lights. What other type of symptoms? And we talked about that a bit already, that everyone is so individual and our brains are all so different that we're going to probably experience different things. But in general, what are some of the things that people with a brain injury may probably experience?
Mm. Yeah, it's there's a wide range. You're absolutely right. Brain fog is definitely one. One of the things that comes along with brain fog often is word finding difficulty. So where you just can't, there's a word and it could be a very simple word, but you can't put your finger on it. It's on the tip of your tongue and you just can't think of that person's name or that word, and it could be something as simple as dishwasher. I'm
Right.
like, can you put the dishes away, and it's you're and then you're getting really mad at yourself and embarrassed, and it feels very odd to not have have those sort of tools at the ready. And it's because everything's been shaken around in your brain. So the synapses and the connections that you had built so many of over the years have been kind of torn apart or damaged. And so you're having to rebuild a lot of those connections. Not feeling like yourself is also a very common experience for concussion sufferers. I certainly had that. I would sometimes feel like I was almost like up above a conversation that I was having, like floating above, almost like watching myself have a conversation with somebody. And it was very weird feeling. And sometimes I would even say, if I was close enough to the person, I would say, do I seem weird right now? I feel weird. I feel like I'm detached from this interaction somehow. And they'd be like, no, you seem okay. I'd be like, okay, good, I guess. But like, man, I don't feel normal. I had a lot of visual vestibular issues, which is a scientific way of saying vision and balance. So dizziness or orientation or balance. Sometimes I would get this thing where, do you remember those like viewfinders? This is going to be, not everybody's going to get this
Click,
reference. Those
click.
click, click viewfinder
Yeah.
things where it would like switch the picture. And
Mhm.
my vision would do that sometimes, where I would feel like things that would be upright would do this weird shift and then eventually come back. Not eventually, quite quickly, but it was very disorienting. Yeah, sometimes the lights were so bright. I started having to carry sunglasses with me everywhere I went because I remember one time leaving my office at lunchtime to go grab a bite of lunch, I think, and I was walking back and it had been cloudy. And this was downtown Vancouver. It had been cloudy and rainy that morning, but the sun had come through while I was out and I just couldn't, I could barely keep my eyes open on the walk back. It was so painful and almost debilitating. Like I just could barely even see where I needed to walk because my eyes didn't want to stay open. I also developed with my second concussion, which I'm sure we'll get to. I also developed chronic migraines and a sleep disorder, and those I would say are not necessarily common concussion, symptoms or post-concussive symptoms, but they're certainly part of that range of things that can come up for people who are dealing with post-concussion issues. So plus all the fun stuff that goes along with a whiplash injury and soft tissue stuff, and yeah, a whole myriad of symptoms.
Yeah. And so you touched on it. You had a second concussion, and it was within the space of 2 years, you said?
Yes, it was about 18 months after the
So
first.
less than 2 years. So what happened with the second concussion? You were an athlete. You grew up, uh, was it playing rugby or some?
I played competitive fast pitch softball, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a saying, right? You talk about it in the book. What did your coach used to say?
Yeah, it was play like it doesn't hurt.
Play like it doesn't hurt. So you take that to heart. You're a kid. He's your coach. You do play like it doesn't hurt, but you also took that into your adult life. You kept on the job, playing like it doesn't hurt. But keep on going, keep on going. And then you had the second concussion. So what happened then? What happened, and how did you get that second concussion?
Yeah, so the second concussion is the story that I like to tell people was the worst first date ever. And so this guy had asked me out and I was trying to be open-minded about, he didn't necessarily seem like my type, but I thought you never know, right? I didn't own a car at the time. I took a cab from my office to where we were meeting and we sat and had a drink. I had a drink, he had like a ginger ale or a Coke or something. And we had a nice chit chat, but I knew pretty quickly that he was not the guy for me. So, I was sort of ready to wrap it up pretty quickly and head on home and call it a night. And we go to leave the restaurant and he says, where are you parked? Can I walk you to your car? And I said, oh, I don't have a car. I cabbed here. I'm just going to catch a cab home. And he said, well, let me drive you home. And I was sort of like, I just met this person. He seems nice enough, but I don't know him. And I don't know, do I want to accept a ride from this fellow? And he sort of joked and it was the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to see what a crappy car I drive. And I was like, oh, okay, haha, sure, that would be lovely. Thanks. Drive me home. So we're driving, and there's this particular stretch of road in Vancouver where it's on West 2nd Avenue for people who are familiar, and there's a light kind of at every block. And we were approaching my neighborhood, and so he was sort of looking at street signs, not wanting to miss the turn. But in doing that, and he wasn't speeding, he wasn't doing anything wrong, but in doing that, he missed the stoplight that was sort of up here because he was looking past it. And I realized at a certain point that this light had turned red and that he wasn't actually slowing down. And so I started to yell, like, stop, stop, slow down, slow down. He braked, but it was too late. And there was a car that was driving perfectly legally, had a green light, was driving, and we T-boned them because we accidentally ran the red light. And so I was the front passenger in this car that accidentally ran the red light. We all walked away from it. I was later told that I was obviously in shock because looking back, it makes sense. I did things that were completely out of character for me. I did not get anyone's last name. I did not take anyone's license plate. I did not wait for the police to come, like nothing. I was just so done with the evening. And I was like, get me out of here. I need to go home. I've got work in the morning. Like, I'm done with this. And so I hailed a cab and went home. And it was, it was later on in talking with one of my specialists that I realized that, what that sort of indicated, that, only a Katherine who was in shock would behave like that. That was not normal behavior for me. Um, but I was so, I think, so desperate to not have that turn into anything. I just wanted to put it away and be like, that was a crappy night, moving on. But the universe had other plans for me. And I think it was, and I mentioned this in the book, I think the universe gives you louder and louder signals sometimes until you listen. And I wasn't really listening up to that point. As we've just talked about, I was pedal to the metal, still working, still doing all my normal stuff, hadn't taken time off to rest or recover or anything. And the universe got a little louder and turned up the volume on me. And second concussion turned out to be a much bigger deal for my brain and body than the first one, even.
And you ended up taking time off, finally, but not right away.
No, heavens no.
So you had one more medical event that sealed the deal, right? And it had nothing to do with a head injury.
No, it's true. It didn't. So I kept working. I certainly had to contend with the fact that this concussion was different and was more debilitating. I was struggling with the migraines, the sleep disorder. I was seeing specialists a lot. I was working longer hours so that I could go to medical appointments during the day. I thought I was managing it all. I told myself that I was managing it and that I was staying at work and keeping on track, literally on partnership track was what I was on and what I wanted to be on, while still healing and recovering. And I had convinced myself that I was handling both and doing both of these things. And I think what happened is that and so I did that for 3.5 years. And 3.5 years of, yeah, soft tissue, injury, pain, migraines, sleep disorder, visual vestibular stuff. Like, it took a massive toll on my body. And and as I've learned, because I've now dealt with some kidney issues off and on since this time, but I think when my body gets particularly stressed, my kidneys start to shut down. And so that's what happened, is I developed a significant kidney infection, and at first didn't even know what it was. I just felt fluish and pretty yucky, and I remember being feverish and sort of aches and pains. And it was my mom and my sister, who both of whom are nurses, said to me, like, it could be your kidneys, or something. Like, you should maybe go get it checked out, head to the urgent care. And I went in and they started doing scans and things and told me, these moments that you remember, things that you remember that have crystallized forever in your mind. And I remember the doctor saying to me, it's a good thing you came in when you did, because if you had waited much longer, you likely would have gone septic. It's basically complete organ failure, and it can be very, very serious. And so having the kidney infection, it was in some ways miraculous, or, and very, very stupid the way I had behaved to that point, but miraculous in a way that my body hadn't shut down sooner. But to me, this was my body shutting down and telling me as loudly and clearly as it could that it couldn't do this any longer. And when you have a serious kidney infection like that, I was having to go to the hospital every day for IV antibiotics. Like, I was off work. There was no muddling through. There was no staying at work when you're in that state. And it was during that sort of 3-4 week stretch that I finally came to terms with the fact that I needed to give my body the rest that it required and that it had been begging for, I think. And I had been ignoring all those signs and pushing through and playing like it didn't hurt for so long. That had become my program. I'm just going to play like it doesn't hurt, and I'll figure it out, and I'll get through it, and I'll take little breathers, I'll take little breaks, and I'll just manage. I'll manage my way through this. until it just became sort of undeniable that I could no longer function that way and had to do something differently.
You did. You took all that stuff, all that being Cat Reilly, the lawyer Cat Reilly, the organized, intense, this intense person, and you devoted it to getting well. So
Yes.
congratulations, my dear. Congratulations. You devoted yourself to getting well. And the book, we're all about hope here, right? And having a brain injury, you can look at that in many ways. You can look at that in a way that's like, oh my God, it's a brain injury. Double whammy for you. And then the kidney infection, which could have killed you. But it set you on a path. It set you just that little trajectory, just what you needed. And now you're an advocate for not only for taking care of one's body, but really doing things differently. So the book talks about this divine timing, the divine timing that the intervention, right? The intervention. You weren't ready to do it for yourself. So the universe, or whoever you want to call it, God, the universe, power, source, kind of said, Kat, this is what we need to do now. I'll take over. So first of all, you started with the retreats, and that in itself was life-changing. So tell us what were some of the steps you started to take that really did work, because there will be people watching the show right now that need to know how you continued after you started working on yourself, how you continued to be a mother, right, with a small little girl, a mother, a single mom, and continuing to be a lawyer. So what did you do?
Yeah, gosh, that was really well put, Fran. I've done a lot at this point. And I think if I can offer some hope to people, the way that I started all of that was actually very small steps. It started very small, and it started before I was, really doing a lot of inner work and inner exploration, when I was still very much looking at all of this as a medical problem and a medical, sort of situation. It was my neuropsychologist and my neurophysio who had me doing some mindset work, and they asked me to do meditations. They asked me to come up with some mantras for myself. They asked me to start doing gratitude work. And so it was some really simple, small tools like that that really did shift my path and start me, on this trajectory. And I make no mistake, I did those things begrudgingly at the beginning, because I sort of thought, what is the point? Like, is this really going to change anything? Like, I have this major, like, health issue. I have this brain injury that is causing me all sorts of chaos in my life that I'm not sure when or if or how I will ever get better. Will I ever be back to my normal self? I really seriously doubted a lot of the time that I would ever feel like myself again. And it was those small shifts, those small habits that started to help. I started journaling more. And, the gratitude, there's things too, and there's a lot of neuroscience now to back up a lot of these practices about why gratitude practices work and the shifts that they make in your brain, and, the neuroplasticity of the brain, and really sort of what we see, what we choose to see and what we choose to experience is, becomes our life, becomes our experience. And so doing that sort of mindset work was a major piece for me, but it really did start in small increments. Going on some retreats was another piece. And I found through those retreats, I found community. And it wasn't a community in those settings. It was not a community of people who had brain injuries. It was a community of people who were going through their own struggles and finding a way through and doing inner work to, heal the parts of themselves that were sort of calling out for help and for healing. And what I think the concussions and the kidney infection and the health issues did for me was open me up to doing that inner work and to looking inside and seeing, why had I struggled so much with these with these circumstances, and what was it about the way that I viewed myself, and that I was pretty clearly, I think, seeing myself and seeing my worthiness through this achievement lens. And that if I couldn't achieve, what was I? Who was I? Who is Kat? If I'm not a lawyer who's out there slaying and, running files and winning cases and negotiating settlements, who am I? And the identity crisis that comes along with, any kind of, there's lots of life circumstances that I think can bring a person to that point. So whether it's brain injury that somebody's experiencing, or some other, life crisis or situation, I think a lot of us come to this point of like, what am I even doing here? What is the point? And why am I doing this? What's it all for? And so it gave me that sort of shift. It opened me up to looking at things in a different way, and looking at how I was operating in these settings. And that, I think one of the biggest realizations I had was that, I had very, very high expectations of myself, and consequently everyone around me. And I was very judgmental towards myself also. And that, I had this sort of, like I say, these high expectations, and things needed to operate at a certain level all the time. And I just wasn't giving anybody, least of all myself, very much grace. And being able to sort of soften into the human experience, and to explore what it means to be, as I now really clearly understand it, to be a soul who's having a human experience, not just a human who might happen to have a spiritual experience, but my soul and my spirit is here to experience these things and learn these things. And going on retreats was one way, and the community that built. And the first couple of retreats that I went on, the focus was something called conscious connected breathwork. That was the modality that we were exploring and utilizing. And I really can't say enough good things about conscious connected breathwork. Breathwork itself has become a bit of a trendy topic, which is great, because I think the more people who know about it, the better. And for people listening out there, I do want you to know that conscious connected breathwork is its own sort of subset, and it's a way to breathe. And when you breathe in this certain way with a certain pattern in a facilitated space, I would recommend. You could probably do it yourself, but I prefer to do it in a facilitated space. It really opens you up, and kind of, by breathing in a certain way, you sort of shut off your frontal lobe and allow it to turn off for a moment, and tap into your subconscious and release sort of the trapped emotions and different kinds of, like, allow your subconscious to clear what needs to be cleared, allow things to come to the surface. So that's been a really powerful modality for me. Among other things that I've now since tried. But yeah, the retreats led me to breathwork, and that I'm very grateful for that.
One of the things about your book that I really appreciated is that you gave a list, not only a list, but you talked about tons of different non-pharmaceutical ways, right? I think we live in this Western world where it's just so easy just to take some kind of a pill to mask whatever's going on underneath. And I'm not judging that, because pills do work sometimes when you really need them. And I'm sure that when you had your kidney infection and all of that, definitely you needed some type of pharmaceutical. But like you said, it doesn't get down to the inner stuff of why it is that Kat Reilly believed that she had to be this top performer, top athlete, the best at everything, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But why? Why am I like that? Because it's killing me. Why do I think I need to do that? Go to work 60-hour weeks with 2 brain injuries. Why am I built like this? Because I don't know. And so the ways that you talked about all of this gratitude, the journaling, the breath work, all of the different ways, and connecting with another community helped you to dig inside. And as a hypnotherapist, this is what I do, right? This is what I do too. And I can't say more about how important it is to get to know yourself and get to know the little one inside of you that feels that she has to be this way in order to be loved or to be good enough.
100%. Oh my gosh. I think that's like you just really hit the core of it there, because it is, I think a lot of this work, and this is a specific subset in a way of this work, but that inner child piece, who is the little person in there who needs that validation, who needs that, that approval of somebody who, not even anybody specific necessarily, but we've come to this point, where we sort of, a lot of us feel like we need, society's approval for certain things, or we need to be doing things in a certain way, or whether it's the voice of a parent or a coach or somebody in our life that has been critical, or intentionally or unintentionally. But yeah, why are we doing all of these things and driving ourselves to the brink? And hypnotherapy is a great modality, like, as you well know. Acupuncture I also found really helpful. There's so many other tools. EMDR was a therapy that also gave me a lot of relief. And I always forget exactly what it all stands for. Eye movement desensitization.
Desensitization.
But it's about eye movement, and it's actually similar to the conscious connected breath work in the sense that it kind of bypasses your thinking brain and gets into your subconscious, so that you can just release and clear out the stuff, the gunk, the things that are stuck that you've been kind of pushing down, and pretending didn't hurt you, or didn't, aren't still there. That breakup that you had, that thing that happened when you were a kid, that hurtful comment from a friend, all those hurts and things that build up. And if you don't let them move, like, energy needs to move. And if you don't find a way to help things move, and you just keep pushing it down, like, gosh, it finds a way to, erupt somewhere, somehow or other.
And I know that there are people that will be watching this that say, well, that's why I get out and run, whatever, 5 miles every morning. What would you say about that? Because you said the energy needs to move. Okay. What, in your opinion, Kat, having done so much in your life, what do you think about just just getting moving?
I can't speak to what the runners, find so appealing about it. I imagine it's very therapeutic to just be on a run, and how rhythmic it is, and the solitude. But I also know some people who run who just put in a podcast and don't want to be alone with their own thoughts. So I think there's something to be aware of there. If you are a person who says, yes, but I go for my daily walk, or I go for my daily run, or I do my this or my that, are you doing it mindfully, or are you doing it in an escapist sort of way? But moving the energy, grounding too is another one that I've learned more about. So moving your body. So all, even just, and I remember saying this to a friend of mine who was a lawyer, and he was sort of like, what is all this stuff that you're doing? And I was like, okay, just give it a chance. And he was telling me about some stuff going on in his life. We're sitting talking over lunch, and I was like, okay, just try this. When you get in your car today to drive home, just like find a song that you love, like love, like one of those songs that you want to play when you're on a road trip, and just like blast it, and like sing along at the top of your lungs, and like singing, dancing, running, walking, going to the beach and putting your feet in the sand, or the soil, or the grass, or the snow, right? Like anything. I think there's actually a ton of tools around us, and a lot of them, and I really love too that somatics is becoming more of a trend, because somatic work, and soma just meaning like of the body, but work that incorporates the physical body, and acknowledges that, like, because I think so many of us are stuck in our brain. I've been stuck in my mind and my brain for most of my life, but getting into your body, grounding in and going like, how do I feel? And also there's a sense of safety that you can access and reclaim if you're when you get present and really ground into your own body. And there's different techniques out there. I think one of them's the 5 4 3 2 1 technique of name 5 things you see, 4 things you smell, 3 things you feel, that kind of thing. All ways of making you sort of get out of your thinking mind and into your body and going, I'm here, I'm in this space, I'm safe, I can be calm, and calming your breath and deepening your breath. 5 deep breaths can also work wonders. I want people who are listening to know, yes, I've done a bunch of work, and like, yes, I've gone on some really cool retreats and things. And you don't have to do any of that. You have a bazillion tools at your fingertips at all times. You can go online and put in the Google search bar, somatic tools, and you will probably find a list of things. And you can pick whatever helps, whatever feels good. Some of this stuff you're going to be like, I don't want to dance around my kitchen. Okay. But do you want to just go out and walk in your backyard and put your feet on the earth? Or do you want to just sit mindfully and have a cup of tea and really, really, really be mindful with what you're eating or drinking? There's just so many ways to do it. So yeah, I would love if people leave this conversation with only 1 or 2 takeaways. I would love for that to be one of them. All these tools are very, very readily available. They're not so scary. They're not so weird. I think part of me wanting to write this book and come to terms with the different pieces of myself and the different parts of my life that I was living was to let people know who are leading a more mainstream life, perhaps, that like this stuff is not so witchy and weird. I wrote off most of this stuff for most of my life as hippy dippy nonsense. And I was just like, that's fine for you, but like, don't need it, don't understand it. Like, I'm good over here. I believe in science and logic and, law and medicine and like all of these very, concrete things. And there's a real, there's a real middle ground there where you don't have to be going to a seance. You don't have to go to a psychic. You don't have to do any of that stuff if that's too weird for you. But your life will probably be better if you think about 3 things you're grateful for and go and, yeah, like I say, put your feet, go have a bath, go have a mindful bubble bath or stick your feet in the sand.
And it's free.
Yes.
Right? It's free. And I'm in Alberta. So, I mean, our Alberta culture in general is a lot different than a Southern British Columbia culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so we Albertans tend to call people from BC tree huggers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and 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 it's true though, because if you can go and hug a tree, it feels great. Just telling you people that, have this thing about tree huggers, hugging a tree feels great. And I've gotten to that point in my life where I think the tree likes it too.
I think you're probably right, Fran. And okay, so interesting that you bring that up, actually. I have a friend here in town who absolutely loves, like, she feels very at one with nature and the trees, and she will hug a tree just with any chance she gets. And I was at a writing retreat with her, and we were out on a walk, and she said, like, don't you ever just, Kat, don't you ever feel that compulsion to like hug the tree? And I was like, I don't really. It's not really my thing, but it's totally her thing. So I definitely have tree hugging friends out here. I'm personally like, for me, not as much into the trees, but like, this is the thing. And I think it was one of your previous guests. I was watching one of the interviews and she said, try it before you deny it, or something
Right?
to that effect. And
Yes, she did.
I think that's a great lens through which to view things because, it's kind of a no, don't knock it till you try it approach.
Yes.
And yeah, and also these things are free. Like, what have you got to lose, really?
How hard is it to open your chest and breathe 5 deep breaths? Right. Like, I think that we've gotten to the point that if it doesn't cost a lot of money, it's not worth anything. And, we're starting a brand new year here. It's like, well, maybe let's look at things a little differently. Kat, how are you raising your daughter in a way that maybe is a little bit different, right? Than maybe you were raised or I was raised, or, the typical mm, urban people.
Mm.
How are you raising your daughter differently?
Ooh, um, I am, gosh, I am trying my very, very best to be as mindful of a parent as I can with her and to really allow her true nature um, to show up and to, I guess, blossom. Because I feel like it's easy as a parent, especially when life is stressful and you've got somewhere to be, and you know we don't sort of have a lot of time for the childlike wonder that kids show up with. And I'm really doing my best to sort of stay out of the way and guide her, but not dictate to her how she should be. And it's so interesting, I have to say, for you're a parent, Fran, and for those people who are listening who are parents, it's kids really, I think, are our greatest teachers and such a good mirror. Like that was one piece I didn't expect was for her to be such a mirror to me, so that when I go to criticize something or to be a bit short with her about something, it really gives me opportunities to reflect back and go like, why am I doing that? Why do I feel the need to hurry her along or to tell her that that's not okay or we need to be done that now? And is it because of how I was raised, or just what I've come to learn from living in this society? And how can I, at least for a little while, I suppose, shield her from some of that? Um, so I really just want her to grow into her own person as much as possible. And I want to stay out of the way as much as possible. Um, and I think too, because kids are also so intuitive. And as adults, we've lost a lot of that. We've blocked ourselves from a lot of that. I'm trying to get back to that. It's been a process, it's been an unlearning for me to try and shed some of this other stuff and these other programs and things that I've been telling myself for years about how I ought to function as an adult in this world, to get back to a more intuitive place. And kids are already there. And so learning from her and listening to her and hearing what her reactions are and observations are has been really eye-opening and enlightening for me. I'm not going to lie, I do also try and incorporate different sort of mini practices where I can. For a while, I was being very intentional about saying gratitudes, like when we would sit down to a meal together. And you know, I would say like how thankful we are for this food and for this lovely house that we have to live in, and this we have a safe, warm place to go to sleep, and that we're so fortunate to have these things. And at a certain point, because she's just a kid, she's almost 6, but like she would just say, "Mommy, why are you always talking about this stuff at dinner? Can I just eat my Annie's mac and cheese?" Um, so still very much a kid, but I'm trying to get in those things and to sort of build, I suppose, like bit by bit, give her those tools as much as I can, tools that maybe I didn't have as a child. I wasn't looking at the world through that lens so much, in terms of how does this make me feel, and that her feelings are okay. That's another big one. And for anybody sort of my age and stage in terms of parenting, gentle parenting is all the rage right now. And like anything, it can get overdone, I think. But I do think there's something to it, because allowing her feelings to be there, and that to let her know that her feelings are perfectly okay, and it is okay to cry. It is okay to, whatever emotion she has is perfectly okay, and to give her space to process those, that I feel like I didn't always have the space to. That's a big one for me.
Anyone who's listening knows, our audience here is I think in general, they're like us, right? They're on a path of just being a better human being, just trying to be a good human being in whatever way
Mhm.
that works. So if we can get healthy, the healthier we can be, the healthier society will be. And that's such a ripple effect, you know?
100%. That's the ripple effect, I think, is everything. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes when I'm in this work or, doing whatever I'm doing, I think like, what is the point? Like, why am I doing all this? Is anyone going to read this stupid book? Like, I don't know. When you're writing it and you're having all the self-doubt, comes creeping in, and you sort of think, well, it doesn't actually matter. It doesn't matter if anyone reads it because it was really important for me to write it for myself, for my own journey. And B, if even only one or two or five people read it and it impacts them positively in some way, that's the ripple effect that will hopefully then, that will change maybe how they feel in a certain situation and will change how they interact with a particular loved one or, what have you. And I think the ripple effect, yeah, it's just such an important piece to keep in mind when you're doing this work, I think.
Is there anything you'd like to add about giving hope to people, maybe who have had a brain injury or who are experiencing something in their life right now that might help them get through it?
Yeah, I think the message that I would want to give to those people is that a lot of what you need to heal is already inside of you. And we are very conditioned, I think, by society to look externally for solutions. And, we spoke a bit about it in terms of even the pharmaceuticals and, looking for help in those external ways. And especially if you're going through a health crisis or a concussion or something along those lines, it can be really hard. I remember feeling really like my body was against me in a lot of ways. I was battling with my own body. Um, but also, I think it's important to remember that, the tools you need to heal really are inside of you. Some of them are your breath. Um, there's, the way that you talk to yourself matters. The way that treat yourself. And there's a lot of healing that can be done. And I think a lot of hope to be had in healing in small increments or in, it's step by step, not feeling like you have to um, bite off more than you can chew. Like healing and change happens in small increments and baby steps. And you've got so many incredible tools, not only inside you, but like within your grasp. And there's actually massive change that can be made. And it may not feel massive right away, and it may feel pretty silly. And I remember when I was first starting, with mantras and meditations,
Mm.
my brain was telling me, this is dumb. This is not going to change anything. Why are you bothering? And, that's the ego talking. And that's, a lot of what we, I think, need to come to terms with. But if you can just give some of these things a try, be open minded. Being open minded and open hearted, I think, is one of the best ways to approaching a path of healing because it's really hard when you're in the muck and going through it. It is a hard place to be. And I think just having little glimmers and little achievable things to do can hopefully make all the difference.
And like you said, what if your brain tells you, why are you doing this? What difference will it make? Actually get curious and say, huh, I wonder why I'm thinking that, right?
Totally.
I wonder why I'm thinking this is not going to work. And then your brain might even tell you, well, da 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 da, whatever. And then it's like it's gonna shut up. So let you do whatever it is that you hope to do, whatever breath work or whatever meditation or mantra or whatever. All it wanted was an answer. So you could tell it why.
Totally, totally. And while we're on the topic, actually, I should mention that I've put together like a bundle of resources that's actually available on my website. And so if people are interested in dabbling in this kind of work, like there's because I've been doing this stuff for a while now, I have some of my favorite my favorite people and my favorite practices. Um, and on the website, the book website is called legallyzen.ca. And if you go onto that website, there will be a spot where you can click. It's a packet of things called Zen Extras. And you can go in there, it's a free download. You'll get a PDF to your inbox that has a whole bunch of tools and practices and things that you can try. So if you're sort of like, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do, this all sounds a bit silly, but okay, maybe I'll just give it a try. But I don't even know where to start or who's good or am I gonna like this? Yeah, I would love to I would love to help people with that because there's some really great meditations. There's actually a free this whole resource is free, but there's some of the meditations that I've compiled in the PDF are from excuse me, an app called Insight Timer, which is a free app. There's tons of good meditations on there. There's also just music and, like different talks and things. Like there's a ton of resources out there. But if you want something super easy and you can just literally go and download it right now, go to legallyzen.ca, grab the Zen Extras. You can try breathwork, you can try meditation, you can, hear what I say about mantras. I've got I've got a playlist on there, a Spotify playlist for my sort of soundtrack to the book. So if that's of interest to people, go check that out.
It's been wonderful to have you, Kat. There's just you have to read the book. Those of you that is it available on your website too?
It sure is. Yes, it's available on the website.
Perfect.
It's available on Amazon.ca.
Yeah.
It's available through Indigo. So yeah, tons of ways to get a hold of the book. And thank you. It's been so wonderful to talk with you, Fran. This has been really, really amazing. And I just thank you so much for the invitation to be on here and to speak to your listeners. And I hope that there is some hope to be found in this whole area for people.
Absolutely. So thank you as well, Kat, and thank you to all of you that joined us today. And I urge you to read the book or to go to Kat's website and get all that free stuff. I mean, it's like a gift. It's a gift so that you don't have to bog yourself down finding it all yourself. It's already been done for you. If you are a new viewer or a new listener, please subscribe. The button's just down there. It'll help get the word out for anyone who might be struggling right now. And maybe that's all you need is a little bit at a time to get your hope back. So, and I hope you do. So, like and subscribe, make a comment as well. That's always nice for me to read, and it's nice for Kat to read as too. Thank you. And thank you, Kat, and have a wonderful 2026.
Thanks again. Take care, everyone.
Bye. This podcast and Inspired Healing Hypnotherapy do not provide medical advice. The information included here is not limited to text, graphics, images, or other material contained and are for informational purposes only. No material in this podcast is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this site.